Welcome to another episode of the Crownsmen Show. I'm here with my co-hosts, Rory Bamford and Roy Slack. Hello, gentlemen. Welcome.
Hi.
Yes, hello.
All right, Rory, you look like you're in a bit of a closet almost.
In a holding cell. I told Rory I'm waiting bail. So
you got kicked out of your office or what?
I'm at my son's place today.
So Rory, how's it going? You don't look quite as radiant as the last time you were on.
I know your camera suggestion is a little bit. It's actually a little bit off because I kind of like that glowing look.
Like the message from the heavens.
Yes.
I'm trying to slow down right now because we're just getting ready for CIM. When this airs, we'll have already done it. But we're doing. Rory, how many episodes are we doing? 28
episodes, 34 companies. Let's go.
In 2.5 days.
28 episodes and a couple of wrap and taps to wind things down.
Yeah, we're doing the end show.
31 episodes then. Yeah, you're right, Roy. 31 episodes, and that's in 2 days and 3 hours, actually. So, Jerrod, not even a half day for the third.
What I never get used to, no matter how much we plan these events, it's like the little things, like making sure we have, we had to order more SD cards because we ordered more cameras and more SD cards, and then we realized with backup, there's all these little details to these events. It's going to be a wild one, but a good one. Roy, how long have you been involved with CIM? Years, right?
Yeah, I took a look back to see. I mean, probably a couple of years after I got out of school, I got involved in a minor way back then. You know, went to a conference maybe, or and then got involved in the local branch and then national. So it's a great organization, and once you're in for life.
Wait, I didn't hear about that.
That's what's going on.
What's that? We have the three of us pick our topics every week. We're like worlds apart on our topics today. It's kind of amusing. So
I know my topic.
Yeah, yours.
I'm not sure what you guys are going to talk about, but I'm here for you.
Well,
are you able to get onto the outline, Roy, that we share?
I
saw
the outline, but I didn't see anything inside the outline. But,
we were running a little behind these days. I think I filled mine out at like 11 o'clock or something like that. Or no, it's like 8.
It's all good.
But I wanted to, and Rory, you and I know a few things about this because we pivoted in our own company. But I was really interested. I was thinking about companies that pivot. So I just looked it up. I found out it was the CEOmagazine.com. So shout out to them. We'll put a link to it. But they had a list of 8 examples of companies that have pivoted. Play-Doh. Roy, had either of you ever heard the story of Play-Doh?
No, I had not.
It's bizarre.
I'm sure you're going to give it some shape.
Oh, man. So
there it is.
I'm done.
So launched. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but launched in the 1930s as a wall cleaner. Kootol was designed to clean the black residue that coal heaters left on walls. However, the demand cleaner declined. Yeah, when oil and gas came in, the demand went down. And then they heard about a teacher using it in classes for artwork. So that's where Play-Doh's from. It's from basically a commercial industrial application of cleaning stuff off walls, and now it's used as an artwork piece.
Had you heard about that, Jerrod?
Nope. And then
to me, I always found it interesting. Play-Doh, you can make Play-Doh at home, I guess, but it's cheaper and better just to buy it. So they're even competing with the homemade brand and winning.
Well, there were 14. This is, I don't know, I didn't double check stats. In this article, it says they were about 14 billion. Their market cap at this time. I don't know what it's now.
That's what they're a public company, which I didn't even realize.
Let's talk about our heavy industry world tour brought to you by Savannah Equipment, supplying mining equipment worldwide. And Corporate Traveler Canada, helping companies travel the globe simpler, faster, easier. We are heading to events across North America and Australia and filming episodes on location. Email us at info@crownsmen.com to be part of Crownsmen's Heavy Industry World Tour. L&H Industrial can custom engineer and build from the ground up any heavy equipment assembly or machine that you need for your operation. Their worldwide 24/7 field services network is on the job whenever you need heavy equipment troubleshooting, repairs, rebuilds, relocations, or replacements. And thanks to their specialized design and engineering and state-of-the-art manufacturing and repair services, they are a go-to international supplier for improved components and custom assemblies for heavy industrial machinery. Visit lnh.net to learn more.
I wanted to use a couple of examples of these pivots to kind of open up this topic. What was the other one? Instagram. Okay, I'll just read it. Instagram began life as Bourbon, a Foursquare-like app that allowed users to check into their favorite spots, share photos, and arrange catch-ups. And then, long story short, they realized that everybody was just sharing photos. That's what everybody wanted to. So they made the pivot, Instagram, and then, of course, they got bought by Facebook for about $1 billion US, and now they're this massive platform. The other one that stood out to me was, and there's, again, link to the article if people want to read it, but the other one was Starbucks. They were making coffee beans and espresso makers, and then they pivoted to actually owning coffee shops. So they sort of expanded. And the one from the Play-Doh, I thought that's an example of following the customers. You hear someone's using your product in a certain way, you go, oh, that's interesting, and you build on it. The Instagram one, what stood out to me was that's using data, not just what you want to do, but you're actually using how the clients use your product and then building off that. And then the one with Starbucks is they didn't reinvent the wheel. There was coffee shops, but they were the first to sort of bring it up at this scale, and they were to bring that European style coffee house, and then just exploded. So the question for both of you I would have is: have either one of you been a part of or know companies who've done major pivots like this? I mean, just the courage alone to do it is worth noting.
Well, Jerrod, you've talked about a few successes. There's certainly a few companies that tried to pivot and didn't do well. I mean, I think of BlackBerry, which, a great Canadian technology company, and they were the smartphone. They were the best phone, and I don't know if you'd call it a pivot, but they focused on being a business phone. And then when they saw Apple taking over the market, they went a different way. And whether they couldn't pivot fast enough or pivoted in the wrong direction, I don't know. But I guess it's just, there are the good news stories that you hear about, and then there's the pivots that don't work, and maybe you don't hear about as many of those.
Well, I think it's worth. Sorry, I just want to quickly note something on BlackBerry. If I remember right, and I may have it wrong, they actually didn't pivot soon enough because they had an operating system that was built one way, and they went, no, it's fine. And I'm pretty sure this is accurate. They went, no, it's fine, and then they tried. It was too late. Apple and Android just went too quick, and it was gone. They couldn't catch it anymore. So they may be a case of that they didn't pivot fast enough.
Yeah.
BlackBerry's funny because I remember I actually bought some shares when they were talking about bringing out their smartphone, because that was when they were trying to I think I managed to get out of it relatively unscathed, because it had already crashed from its peak stock price of 65 or something, whatever it was. And it was down around $10 a share. But I think that was their big thing. They tried to launch that smartphone with the same sort of interface as, or the same type of screen as Apple. And then if I remember correctly, people didn't even take it. They were done. Yeah. Apple and Google had already, or Apple and Samsung had already taken over.
Note to self: don't get stock tips from Rory.
Not when I was Not when I was 20. Not when I was 20.
But when it, yeah, and Roy, you're bringing up a good point. Is that these stories are all the success stories, but there's all the, but I guess maybe to focus on the success stories. Kind of going back, Roy, have you seen companies even in the heavy industry that have made these sort of major pivots?
I think we're seeing it right now with the equipment manufacturers, and I don't know if you'd call it a pivot, but the focus on battery electric vehicles. And we've had some people on the show. Jerrod, you've interviewed some people, some companies that are really going there, and the technology is significantly different than diesel equipment, and the application and different things. So for a company that for many, many years has manufactured, a fossil fuel powered vehicle, to make that switch is a big deal. And it's market driven. I guess Plato was market driven too in a way, but it's what's happening in the industry now. And I think we're going to see the companies that embrace it and figure it out are going to thrive. And there's going to be a few companies that are going to be lagging and might have to play catch up. And there's going to be some companies that are going to stick to the old way and hopefully, survive it. So I don't know if you'd call that a pivot so much, but it's something that is very prevalent in the industry, in our industry right now.
It's such a, this is a really hard, even when I'm talking about, Rory, we pivoted, we were doing marketing service. I don't even hardly bringing that up, but we used to offer that as a service, help people internally manage their marketing stuff. Mm-hmm. And it didn't work very well for us. But then the show was basically a marketing strategy, get people on the show, get them talking to you, and then try to sell your services. Of course, nobody cared about the services. As the story goes, they just wanted to do the interviews and go from doing one a month to basically one a day or on that trajectory. So I guess the big question is, how do you see when something's not working? How do you pivot? How do you go from, even Roy, use an example of even you came into our studio and were sort of checking us out when we first started and offered support to sort of help us get in, more people on the show and work with CIM and that. What do you think that is? Even mentally, Rory, I'm going to ask you first, and then Roy, just seeing opportunity. I'm stumbling all over, but I guess that's what I'm asking, is how do you see opportunity and then kind of go for it? What is your third?
I think on that side of it, I think the pivot happens. Well, obviously you start out, you're just trying to figure out if you can do something as a startup business. But I think it really comes down to recognizing, is there something that the customer really gravitates to? Actually, it's actually interesting, Jerrod, because you said there wasn't a tie-in, but I was actually talking about in the finance side, companies that really focus on their winning products or winning business segments. That actually does tie into when you see an opportunity. If you're a small business, if there is something that the people want, give it to them and let them drive how that product develops. We, time and time again, even on the production side, when we stay focused on what the clients want, it wins. And don't deviate. If anything, if something isn't landing well with a client, then just basically you don't need to offer it because nobody wants it. Give them what they want.
Which is mentally that's a hard thing to do, because you sit in a meeting and all of a sudden you get a little bubble, you think things are a great idea, you roll it out, and then it's crickets. It's crazy. It's so crazy.
There's two maybe opposing ideas here, because on the one hand, if the market demands it, there's an opportunity. When we talk about innovation and technology, the market doesn't know it. It's not there yet. And so, the old adage, how's the saying go? You build a better mousetrap, everyone anyway, I don't know how the saying goes, but the it doesn't work in real life. There's a lot more to it than that, and often it's the innovator or the entrepreneur, their belief in this product is this is something that's going to work and it's going to be better. And sometimes the market isn't looking for better. Sometimes the market's happy with what they got. And until you can unveil something that's, and not just a little bit better, it has to be scalable. It has to be, wow, we never thought we could do this. So that's the other, not opposite, but a totally different challenge when it comes to a pivot is, going from innovation to entrepreneurship to mass market.
Well, you see, even like Coca-Cola is like they didn't they do like a new Coke or something way back in the day, and it was just that was one of those things that they thought that everybody would take it up, but then they just pivoted right back. That's an example they pivoted right back to.
What did they do? They actually changed the flavor, right?
Yeah, I think that they went.
Yeah.
They really tried to change it up.
Yeah.
And the market just said no.
They went new, and the market didn't like it.
It is interesting though, because that is like the pivot, like you said, Roy. Sometime like with the show, when we started doing that, podcasts were a thing then. They weren't nearly as well. They're not even dominant now, you would say. But you see, like the people like with the major like podcast platforms, they're now in movies and stuff like that. But it is interesting because what does the market want, and that can be really tough. Like trying to figure that out, especially if you're trying to launch a new product or if something will be superior, I guess.
When you say about the podcast, though, that's something interesting there. And even some of the stuff you're touching on, Roy, like the diesel engines are still being sold.
Yep.
And I think that's maybe
they're still the market, definitely the market share, no doubt about that.
And there's sort of like an art almost to keeping your winner, going back, Roy, jumping into your finance side, keeping your winners going. But then if like the podcasts are like, we use Rogan as an example because there's nobody bigger. There's not a media platform bigger than Rogan, which is insane.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you look up what kind of cameras he used, it's a very affordable setup. Like it's not the production that's getting him the views. It's just the conversation, the platform. Mm-hmm. But he never stopped doing stand-up. He worked on a TV show, a couple TV shows. He did Fear Factor. He did that, I forget what it was, News Radio.
Didn't he host the wrestling? Was he not
he's UFC.
Commentator on UFC?
Yeah, commentator on the UFC. And then this thing just grew, and that is sort of, I feel like sometimes when people think pivot, they think full shift. They don't add on like a component that needs to like drive into this area while they're still. And I think that, like the Coke Zero, why not release a new, like now that's what they do, right? They just release new types of products, but it's always Coke.
Yeah, it's really interesting because there is actually, when you start seeing like Roy's section on like the engineering and infrastructure as well, how do you keep going with what's basically keeping the operating, but then you're using some of that operating to, if the market's demanding battery electric vehicles, actually like when this airs, so Hatch is going to be doing an episode on mining now at CIM. Their 12th division of engineering now is battery electric facilities.
Right.
So that's the demand they have 12 verticals in mining, and that's the 12th one.
Yeah.
So that demand is growing so much that they're having to engineer for those capabilities.
And still, Jerrod, like your point, most of the manufacturers, diesel equipment is still the vast majority of their sales. But the time it takes to develop this technology, you don't want to be caught behind, because if the market goes from early adopter to the mass market with regard to battery electric, and you haven't developed your product, then you're going to lose 4 years of market share until you catch up. So there's even though there's not a lot of battery electric vehicles in the mining industry right now, there's a huge focus on them, anticipating where the market's going to go. And because development of some of this technology takes time, you can't wait. You can't wait until 50% of the market is battery electric. You have to be ready for that, or you're going to miss it.
Is hybrid still, is that going to be used a lot still, or is that what's being used a lot already? Like I know like locomotives use a hybrid system already.
Not so much in mining, Rory, because one of the benefits of battery electric is that you can significantly reduce the ventilation you put into a mine.
Right.
So if it's hybrid, so if you're running diesel part of the time, you've got to ventilate for that. So
true.
The savings the main savings in terms of power are in the ventilation systems that you need to ventilate the mines. So hybrid, I don't know. I haven't seen much in the hybrid area.
That makes a lot of sense what you're saying though, because then you're still, if you go pure battery electric, then you don't have to worry about that ventilation for the diesel power. And then the other thing too is like with nuclear being talked about more, you would think they'd be able to start setting up like nuclear generation facilities to really power up that equipment. That's probably that next step.
Yeah, if you don't have hydro, then anyway, that's a whole other animal. I can't remember the acronym, but the small modular nuclear is, from a science point of view, it's a great alternative, but there's still that public acceptance that's going to be a real challenge.
That would be a great topic to cover for one of the days. Rory, what were you sort of looking on the finance side this week? We already touched on it a bit, but maybe just unpack it a bit more. Yeah.
Again, you'll hear the same. I'm reading through all the Buffett shareholder letters, so I just keep basically learning what he basically tells you how to run a business on the financial side. So he said one big area to look at is if there's a business that is like a lot of businesses that are large, they have your corporate company, and then you have your different business units. And he said a lot of times those corporate leaders will be like, yeah, look at this business unit. It's running at a 15% profit rate. Then what happens is they'll end up taking those profits and plowing them into a business that maybe isn't doing so good. Maybe it's only generating 5% or it's losing money. And whereas you really should be focusing more of that capital onto that winning business, or letting them keep that capital to continue growing that business at that rate. So those winners will keep building better moats with the products that the market wants. So it can be also easy for the corporate company to see that winning business, and then even like within their own operations, not be running at a capital rate like 15%. So it is interesting, because I was talking to another upcoming guest that will be on the show, and they in the last year said they just continued focusing on mining like in the last 12 months. And because they've solely been focusing on that, they've had some major wins doing business with some of the large miners in Canada. And then they've got like a fan manufacturer that they've partnered with. They do sensing technology. So so basically they can monitor and make sure like everything's running efficiently, like in a ventilation system with the fans. So it really struck me. I was like, yeah, that's an example of they just, instead of kind of deviating away from that main focus, they're actually they're staying with what's strong in their business right now, and they're growing on that instead of looking at, where's the grass greener on the other side.
Roy, I know you'll have some comments on this, but I have to ask, I'm very curious on this one, is what is it with our brains though that wants to do exactly what you're talking about, Rory? We struggle with it in our business. Now I'm basically always watching out for myself. One with staff, one with where you're pumping money into business development or even shows where, let's say you've got 10 people and you decide one person who seems a little weak and you'll pour like love and affection trying to get them to like up to this level. And I've even seen it where then at the expense of your people that are just driving everything, they are just busting their ass. And you double down on the person that is not as engaged. And you're stressed out about it. You're talking about it in management meetings or pumping money into shows, Rory, that are not, we put a lot of effort into the shows that are not winning.
Yeah, some shows just don't have as much.
They just don't have as much
interest in.
But what is that thing that gets people that sort of tricks us into putting so much effort into the thing when you've got like a winner over here and you're like, okay, you're fine. And then and then when it starts to crumble, you're like it's like a disaster's happening. It's like, well, yeah, you didn't take care of it. What do you?
And I think, we've done that from a personal point of view too. And for years it was identify your weaknesses and work on them. Get better at it. And I remember Marcus Buckingham wrote, I can't remember the name of the book, but his book was all about focus on your strengths.
Right.
So, and as a leader, seek out what the strengths of your people are and put them in positions where they can thrive, utilizing their strengths. And all too often we'll set up training, if someone is struggling in one area, well, we've got to train them and get them better at that. Well, there could be a number of reasons why they're struggling. And probably the most prevalent reason is they don't like that part of the job.
Yeah.
And we focus a lot of time and effort on getting them better at something that they just don't like doing anyway.
Right.
So and that's the challenge in leadership is, and there's some really interesting concepts that I looked into on organizational structure. And the traditional organizational structure, we will set up an org chart and try to fill those roles instead of taking the personnel that we have now, charting their strengths and structuring an org chart based on that. And I thought that was a really interesting concept. I mean, maybe a little bit academic, but just a different way of looking at things.
So not structuring it based on what positions you need to fill, but look at the strengths of your team and then structuring it that way. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and once you do that, there will still be gaps that you have to decide how to fill.
Right.
But it's just a different way of looking at your organization. And it's not the answer, but it allows you to think a little bit more openly about how to develop your people. And
I like that.
If someone's weak in something, you spend all this money trying to train them in their weakness. Why don't you take their strength and have them dealing with peers and get them better at that? They're great at that now. Get them excellent at that.
Yeah.
Instead, we spend a lot of time, getting better on something that they're never going to be good at anyway.
Yeah, basically getting the gazelle, that example you love, Roy, getting the gazelle 2% faster when the lion is 50% faster. Is that what you're talking about? No. But now, just to keep it over on the financial side, though, when this comes into companies allocating capital or drawing capital from their winners, Roy, what you're talking about, that's a real problem. That's a real issue.
So I need to tell you a story because in the late 80s, we set up a company. We did take it public, and I was running the contracting division. And actually, Daryl Sittler was on the board. So I said I wasn't going to get into hockey now, and Daryl Sittler came up to me and said, well, you're the cash part of the business, which was true. Our company was making money. There was an exploration part of the business, and all that cash was going to exploration. Now, that's fine for a junior mining company, but running a contracting company, all I was doing is managing cash flow, because the nature of construction is it is a cash flow business, and you've either got it all coming in or it's all going out. There's never, any middle ground there. So when a new project started and we needed cash, and the cash was going to Mexico or to Brazil on an exploration play, I was dealing with the bank instead of our clients.
Wow.
But that's an example, and that was that was the long-term vision of my partners, and not my long-term vision. I didn't want to be a cash flow expert, but that's what happens when you've got one division supporting. I wasn't one division supporting the vision of another, and when all is said and done, maybe that's the long-term goal. And maybe that's the part you're playing in the overall game. But,
what do you think the right thing?
Yeah, we live that.
What do you think the right thing to do, though? Because what we're talking about is not basically pulling all the capital from the winner to something that's not. But then earlier I'm talking about successful pivots. Well, that required, I'm sure Plato had to put money into that pivot. What's that? I mean, it's going to be different. But I just mean in general, what is that balance between pushing into a new market, or else you do get left behind, and not draining your winner?
I still think it comes down to leadership and really believing in the pivot. Because there's going to be a lot of people saying, well, shouldn't go there. That's going to be a failure. There's going to be perseverance, and there's going to be an ultimate belief, an inspired belief that that's going to work.
Did it end up paying off for them, Roy? Like, was their vision, with that, it sounds like they were taking a lot of cash flow out of the profitable entity.
They went on into the junior mining field, and I went on my way, and it was an amicable, there were no problems there. We just, my long-term vision wasn't to be a junior miner.
Yeah, right.
It was to be a contractor.
They were out trying to find the next play for mining. That was their goal.
And you know what? In the long run, they did very well.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And I did okay too. But we were both following our vision. And when there were three partners. I was one of three partners. Two partners wanted to do one thing. I was happy doing what I wanted to do, and I wanted to grow it, but I couldn't grow it with the cash going to exploration each month.
Right.
Do you think, though, Rory, do you think, though, that maybe a company should put on, let's say it's 50, what is the example you used, Rory? 15%, I think is the number you used.
Yeah.
Do you think then a company should be saying, okay, you're the winning horse, though? I mean more from a financial 3% is going to go to, we believe this thing can be number 1 or 2 in the market, or or it's going to innovate the market, or whatever your reasoning. Because Rory, what you're saying is there's a belief behind it. Let's say there is belief, but the numbers don't lie. You've got a winner and you've got someone that's not making money. Is there a way do you think that you should structure it? And I'm thinking this for myself, Rory, entrepreneurs in general, to do that in a way that keeps the winner going and allocates the proper amount of capital to something new. Do you think there's sort of not a precise formula, but some sort of formula that you should develop if you're going to do that kind of stuff?
I think you have to have people that believe in the role they've been assigned. And what I mean by that, at Cementation, we had a substantial engineering group. And Dave, who was running engineering, he was aligned with our vision of being a design-build contractor. Mm-hmm. And he had the experience and the knowledge and the people that they could have been a consulting group. No problem. But he believed in what we were trying to do. And so that division of the company, it made money, but it also played I was going to say pivotal, but I'm confusing terms now, played a key role in getting the contracting company to where it wanted to be in terms of these major design build projects, which we never could have done without engineering.
Mm-hmm.
But that was, that was the leader of the engineering group believing in our overall vision,
Right.
where we wanted to go. Where if that wasn't the case, it wouldn't have worked.
Rory, what are your thoughts on this? Like that allocation of, because you can't stay do you think there's some sort of balance there?
I think there's definitely a balance. Like if you've got your, let's say you've got your one company that you want to have for, say, new products or new development, I think you would take, if you've got one company that's making a lot of profit, you would probably talk to the leaders of that segment and go, okay, so we want to try and, going to what Roy said about like each person's like role, if it was very transparent and you're like, we're going to try and build up our capital and we want to start basically trying to expand, and we think we have the product to do it. So we're going to use like a portion of this funding, because you're going to use, maybe it's as simple, if they're making 15%, maybe you're taking 33% for growth. You're maybe rewarding shareholders with 33%, and maybe 33% is being used to continue to grow your winning horse, so to speak. You could do something like that where it's like thirds, and maybe they go, well, that might be a little bit too much we actually need more capital to continue the growth. That gets back to what we talked about last week. But I do think you can have those conversations where they're kind of on board with that. And it is the long-term approach as well. Like a year goes by so quick. Sometimes you see where people are trying to, it's almost like a race to get that out. I mean, there's certain industries like the tech industry, and you see there is rapid growth, but with more of these stalwart companies, you can probably plan out that strategy longer term as well, and it's not going to hurt. Like if you have that plan over 3 to 5 years, it probably does allow for a better planning strategy than accidentally blowing through way too much capital way too fast.
Roy, do you think the consulting arm, like, do you think if that leader had said, hey, I think we can push into this area, just to sort of pretend that you did it, would have there been a plan forward without running a risk to your winning horses?
My own experience in my business is that didn't work. And I was with a company that tried that to make the engineering a profit center, and then the engineering is charging the construction company by the hour for their engineering, and it becomes an us and them scenario.
I see.
So
in that particular case,
that would be difficult. But I want to comment on what Rory said there, because when you get into a public company, and you have a fiduciary responsibility to the shareholders.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a leader, you may have a vision, or the company may have a vision of what they want to do, but they have to make sure that's aligned with what their shareholders want from the company. And and nobody wants to be a Kodak, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the risk of not taking chances, of not innovating. And so everyone has to weigh that risk of trying something new and innovating and pivoting, like we were talking about, versus the risk of slow and steady growth, or just staying neutral growth, and versus the risk of being Blockbuster or Kodak or some of the poster childs for people that didn't change and died because of it.
I'm curious. You know what? Something though, I do wonder. Just came to my mind. Like Kodak, BlackBerry, Blockbuster. We assume that they could have changed. I do wonder if sometimes just the industry changes hands. Like Blockbuster. Like once they realized where it was going, was it already too late? If BlackBerry had pivoted 2 years early, were they really going to stop Apple? Were they really going to stop that? Was Android? I mean, Android now they have more phones out in the market than Apple. Were you ever really going to stop Android? I don't know. I sometimes wonder if we put a little too much into that they failed, but they might have just sometimes you just get beat.
Well, and some of them, I mean, I'm trying to remember the story of Kodak, but weren't they the developers of digital cameras?
I think they started. Yeah, I think they were.
And they made a corporate decision that no one's ever going to want to go that way. I mean, you want a picture in your hand, and so they made a conscious decision not to pivot.
They were too early.
They had the technology. What was that show? We have the technology. Anyway.
Usher. Yeah.
So,
yeah, they had it in 1975.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it too.
Geez, that wasn't that long ago, Rory. But
no.
I guess that's all relative. But
1975, also when Rory became a member of CIM. It says it right here. In Google. It's incredible.
I don't believe everything you read on the internet.
Sorry.
Got him.
I got jokes too, Roy.
That's what they are.
Man, okay. I think it's an easy pivot into the next is Roy. I know you've already touched on it, but I do want to wrap up with this. How much has the mining industry actually changed? Like when you go onto a mine site now, is it a different place than it was 20 years ago? Like, is the technology, in other words, how much of it is the hype? Because if you talk to anybody, they will tell you we are an innovative leader in the industry. It's like, yes, I've heard that slogan. Is the last 10 companies have that same slogan. Is it really different on the ground in mines?
Well, I want to start out by saying I put down innovation as a topic, and I think we could spend a couple of shows on it easily, because when I look at the Crownsmen shows, most of the shows are about innovation.
Yeah,
they're about companies that are doing things differently. And when I say innovate, it's you can invent something, but until you make it commercially viable, it's not an innovation, right? I can't remember the exact definition, but
that's a great way of saying it.
Yeah. So there's lots of inventions out there, but and Don Duval, I think he was on the show. There's a number of people that have stated mining industry is not short on innovation. We're challenged with adoption. And there's a lot of reasons for that. When you look at taking 10 to 15 years to develop a mine, from first steps to permitting to engineering to construction to production, how much innovation can you incorporate at the start that's going to be relevant by the time you get the mine built?
Yeah.
And companies are trying to do that. And so to answer your question, Jerrod, yes, big difference now than 20 years ago. A lot of the differences we see are incremental. Like, we don't see huge step changes. What we see is a lot of things. So, we talked about automation before, enabling technology. Remote operation now is possible because cameras are that much better. Like, we've had remote equipment for years and years, but the visibility for the remote operator wasn't that good. And as the cameras improved, all of a sudden this became viable.
Right.
So there's enabling technology. There's, new things coming out. And then AI and optimization is just an area that's just beginning, and it's blowing up in all industries. And we're just beginning to see what it can do. And, I'm one of those people who doesn't really understand it. We had a presenter come to the board and present on, AI for beginners, whatever you want to call the presentation, to try and understand it, because it's going to be so important in our industry. Anyway, I don't know if I answered your question, but I can.
But you put in a note like the rail there. They've been on the show. That system, or I think that was a show you booked, right?
Yeah, they've been on a couple times with the. Yeah, and that's their electric, the electric haul system.
Yeah.
So
Material handling.
They're out of Chicago, right?
no, they started
Sudbury
in
origins.
Ontario.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Sudbury origins.
And it's basically, I mean, to really simplify it, it's basically like a roller coaster ride, almost, right?
Yeah, I wanted to mention Railware because there's different innovations. There's some things that are easy to implement. Railware, to get the full benefit out of it, you have to change the mine design.
Right.
Yeah, I
And
know.
it's,
That's exactly what I was going to ask about.
The old story about I can't remember, was it Vasquez, who the explorer was that burned the ships so they couldn't return to America? You know, some of these innovations are such that you have to change the design, and if it doesn't work, there's no plan B. You can't go back. And that's why some of these are great innovations, but more challenging to implement and to get buy-in.
What's that?
Railway's been at it for quite a while, and they're gradually making inroads, but it's
tough. It's
Yeah.
tough. That I don't know that name. The I don't know how you say that.
Muckahai.
Yeah, Muckahai. What is that one?
That's a mining method that had been developed at Torex. I'm on the board of Torex.
Oh,
And,
okay.
and Fred Stanford, and it is another similar example. To get the benefit out of it, you will not design the mine in a traditional way. But if you design a mine to get the full benefit out of it, there's no option.
It's
If
just
something doesn't work, you can't go back and say, "Oh well, put scoops and trucks in." It doesn't work that way. So
Oh, okay.
very hard for the industry to buy in without seeing a proven example. Injection hoisting is another one where it would be beneficial to a number of mines, but until it's proven full scale, it's going to be difficult for anyone to buy into it.
So injection hoisting, cementation, is that something that they were developing then? Or they are
we,
developing?
We developed that, and it's instead of hoisting, you're pumping ore to surface.
Pumping ore to
basically.
surface.
So it's through a pipeline instead of a shaft, and
Oh, okay.
there's a lot of benefits to it. But the technology has been tested. But the next step is a full scale test, which means it has to be pumping, thousands of meters vertical. So it's a big, expensive setup to prove that.
Is it like something like railware or injection hoisting, or is the big drawback? What keeps the mine from doing it? Is it the fact that they can't go back, or is it shareholders? They don't want to scare shareholders by saying, "Hey, we're putting this new system and it's going to cost us X amount of dollars, but there's no going back on it." That scared me.
No, I don't. I don't think it's shareholders so much.
No.
And Railware is proven technology.
Yeah.
It's being used at different properties.
Yeah.
But to get the maximum benefit out of it, you would look at drifts that are steeper than you would drive a truck on, for example. And then if you're not meeting your production quotas. So, what was the old advertisement IBM had before? Nobody gets fired for buying IBM. Was that maybe that's before your time. But the idea is that if you're designing a mine and you're designing based on proven technology, that's fine. But if you're putting your neck on the line to put in something brand new,
Yeah.
You're the hero or you're the goat. And I don't mean the GOAT, I mean the goat.
Yeah.
And
Roy, one thing I want to touch on for like a future, because we're getting close on time here today, but I was talking to DRA Global, and they're saying like the permitting for mines, Canada versus the USA now. Canada, it's about 18 years. USA is about 12. So that's another area where I think it'd be interesting to see if like this innovation could potentially tie into somehow increasing, like speeding up that process, because Canada is like so far behind now.
well, that's those numbers. You could do some research on those numbers. I mean, the U.S. state by state, you see a lot of differences. Canada, province by province as well. But you raised an interesting point there, because we had Mike from SafeSite on the show.
Yeah.
And they had developed this technology where instead of somebody inspecting the face, their equipment could inspect it.
Yeah.
So you don't have anyone in an area of danger. According to legislation, you're not allowed to do that. A person, a supervisor, must inspect the face. Now, the good news story is they developed this technology. The industry and Mike and team were able to get the legislation changed, which is very rare. But, and I don't remember the exact wording now, but it's not a supervisor must inspect in person, but they must inspect by, an accepted means or something like that. But the point is that there's a fair number of innovations, and because they're brand new, the legislation won't let you use them. So, in Canada, dogging on steel guides, you need dispensation from the ministry to be able to do that. Right. A very specific example, but I found what was interesting with SafeSite, and mining legislation doesn't change quickly. It's a slow process, but everybody saw the benefit in making the work safer. That's the key thing that helped move the legislation more quickly. And if it's an innovation that's going to protect people, we have a chance of changing that legislation for the better.
Oh, well, we cover some ground in these episodes, gentlemen.
Here, there, and everywhere.
Here, there, and everywhere. But it's I will say,
to Plato.
Yeah, but they're very similar to the conversations I hear and am a part of in the industry, because everybody's trying to kind of figure it out. So thank you both. Any closing comments, or should we leave it there?
Just make sure that you subscribe to Mining Now to watch all those episodes that Roy just mentioned, Railware, SafeSite, and the other 190.
193.
Yeah, and I'll just
193 now.
That comment is that, I enjoy so much hosting a Mining Now show because I always learn. Yeah. I've been in the industry a long time, but the things on the show are new, and they're innovative. And a lot of them are safety oriented, which is close to my heart. Yeah. But there's so many new things out there, and they can be a boon to your operation, whether it's mining, construction, whatever. And just seeing something new that somebody's using, best for industry practices, even cross industry, can be a huge benefit to your organization. So keep an open mind and look for new and innovative things.
Yeah. And I will add to that, a lot of the nice things, and this is on all our shows. We have, of course, Building Energy. We'll put links to all of them. We have Building Energy, The Crownsmen Show, Agriculture Now, Mining Now, and, of course, The Crownsmen Show, and Change Itself with Gus and Eric.
And The Construction Show.
And The Construction Show.
We got them.
The nice thing is most people, if their technology is not tested, if it hasn't been in a full-scale operation, they won't come on the show yet. So most of the people that are coming on the show, they've already been through like the R&D stage. They've developed it. They've had at least one operator on board, an onboarding partner. They've got all of that. So most of like if you ever go through that playlist, most of those are ready they're ready to go into an operation. So it's an interesting sort of niche, just because of the long form. People don't want to do it. They don't want to talk for 45 minutes if they're actually not ready for the market. So it's just a little niche that we've sort of found ourselves. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. Also check out Rory. You've got Cranky Old Men Drinking Beer.
We're almost at 1,000 reviews. So
really?
Nice.
I think we'll celebrate when we guess what we'll do to celebrate.
Yeah.
Bring out the whiskey?
That's not going to happen.
Rory gets scrappy when he gets on the whiskey. That's the rumor I hear. I don't know. Okay. Check out the other shows. Gentlemen, thank you. We'll see you on the next episode of The Crownsmen Show.